Okay. Before I get to express what it's mine to express today, we'd like to let everybody know, especially those of you who are Spanish speakers and are looking for a deeper connection to spirit through prayer. I am leading a retreat in Unity Village this August from the 10th through the 13th, only 3 days, so it's not too long. And it's called In the Heart of Prayer. And we are going to see prayer from the perspective of how the heart is so important to a body for it to function, and how prayer is vital for us to function in the world. So there was an early bird special of $349. Imagine, for $349 meals and retreat and everything, you just have to pay your way there, and the hotel, which starts from, I don't know, $40, $50 a night if you stay in an Airbnb. And I called the director of retreats, and I told her, I'm going to Unity on the Bay, and the early special ends on May 5th. I'm sorry, need to extend that. And you know what she said? Okay. You got power, okay? So for more information, just go to Unity on the Bay website, and you will be led to where you need to go. If you have any questions regarding it, come and talk to me. So as many of you know, I served as your associate minister for a really short period of time. Never thinking that it was going to be that way, but circumstances took place, and I had to step down. And I believe that it was meant to be for many reasons. I think for spiritual, practical reasons. I learned a lot here, believe me. Like one friend told me, she used to live in this area, and she says, as I was taking the job, she told me, are you aware that Unity on the Bay is the best run church in the movement? The best systems and all of that? And believe me, I saw that. And I remember one of my first surprises is like, no, you need to turn in your talk titles like a quarter in advance. So in November, I was working on my talk for March. And I remember saying, okay, I change, everything must change. And I went, everything must change. Never realizing that actually March was going to be the month of the most change in many years in my life. When I realized, oh my God, in 8 months I have moved 3 times. And as you know, my father, who's been the closest human being on this earth for me, had his transition in February. And I look back and I go like, at some level, my heart or my spirit in me was telling me something was starting to boil up, but I could not pinpoint it until later on. Now I see really the bigger picture. Change, we know, is the constant in this universe. And still it can be so scary because we feel so vulnerable. The ego hates uncertainty, hates to go into the unknown. And that's what change involves. We start sensing sometimes we don't. Change can be abrupt. But ultimately, at any point in our life path, we're going to have changes that are really key for our continued evolution. I was thinking, wow, you have come a long way, even though it's been hard for me like any other human being. I remember my mom telling me, you know, I went on a day to give birth to you, and 4 days later, you were born. And I'm like, oh, I really like that space, right? It's like, why should I change this? I believe that the more we grow in consciousness, the more flexible we are in fluctuating with or flowing with change. what I see, and I don't know if you can relate to me, is that when change, inner change to me is more difficult than external change. Because sometimes you go, oh, okay, these circumstances are changing, but when something internally is not clicking anymore and you cannot figure out what it is, it's hell. It's like the heart or something beyond the mind is telling you, is giving you some sensations, and the mind is like somewhere else. And it takes for both of them to come together and click for you to start getting a new perspective and feel more secure, and you can move forward. As I was preparing for this talk, I remembered this lady in her late 20s. She's Mexican. In my former church, Unity of the Triangle, when we moved to a new location, I suggested, I can do the rentals here. I have a very strong business background. And they said, okay, you manage the rental. So I started doing that and connecting with a lot of people in the community. And this particular girl came to me and she says, I would like to rent this for a big conference that I'm doing. And yeah, she brought like 300 people into that church, and it was a highly motivational talk and presence. And I was like, wow, so young and so much power and presence and following. And after a while, we started to know each other more because she kept renting the facilities. And one day she shared her life story with me. She says, well, I come from this city in Mexico. I grew up in really, really poor conditions, to the point where I was 12 and I left the house. My parents couldn't support me, and I went out in the streets for years. And somebody approached me mentioning coming to the United States as the land, the American dream. And I said, yeah. And it was some sort of human trafficking conditions that describe how she made it to the US. Ultimately, she gets herself out of that and meets this guy who's 20 years older, marries him, has 2 children, and through that process, she starts reading about self-help books, courses, and ultimately she becomes this inspiring presence among Latinos in North Carolina and other states. And I even interviewed her for my radio show, because to me, to see where she had been and where she was headed and the passion she had, it's like, oh my God, she's like my heroine. Especially, knowing that she only had a 6th grade education. And, sometimes I go, oh, you don't know enough, or, how the ego can get to you. And I'm like, with a 6th grade education, she's touching lives and honoring her purpose. Pandemic times came along, and of course, she was still undocumented. And she was in the process of being legalized. She gets sent back to Mexico. Her kids stay with her new partner, and somebody else is running her business of motivational speaking, whatever. And she says, I was hoping I could get in touch with my mother and do some healing work, but the mother didn't show up. And she told me I spent like weeks and months in a hotel looking at the ceiling and being depressed. Maybe doing a conference here and there. Ultimately, she makes it back to the state, to North Carolina, feeling a little bit better, seeing that her children were fine, that the business was fine, and she was like, I'm empty. Something is not clicking. And this is where she shows up in my office, and she tells me, I know you have the solution. Tell me the book that I need to read. And I go like, it doesn't work like that. But she says, I know it's spiritual nature of, and we start engaging, it's like, there are times in which our soul wants more. There's more to be discovered. There's more to express. And you were like on the go, 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 but it's more than that. But of course, that involves going into an area on familiarity. You know, we get into fear we feel the fear, we don't know what it is, and going within can be extremely frightening. It's what this lady Joan Borisenko says, is going into the land of the unknown, where the old maps that used to guide our way are no longer useful. And whatever we have been operating on is no more. And whatever it's meant to be, the what I'm supposed to understand and learn is not there anymore. And what do? We fall, we get depressed. Found this quote that I think explains it really well. It says, I don't know where it's from, somebody on Facebook. When a pattern is finally coming to an end, especially one that's being held in your body for a long time, that's also when you'll face the most fear and the most resistance, because being set free actually feels incredibly uncomfortable and unsafe in relation to continuing to play it out what you've always known. Isn't her story our story? When we go there and we go, It involves going within. And like I said, we are not that familiar because many of us, most of us, are trapped in the doing and the having. Doing, having, and the being. I'm not saying that we don't have time to be, but our tendency to keep up with the world is to do more of that and less of the being. And this now, managing this discomfort, involve going to that place of being. It's almost like the soul is tired of whatever and has signed up to gain more. It's a call for greater awareness of a wholeness. I have a quote by Indian guru Meher Baba that says, there is an impetus in the absolute to become conscious of itself. The progressive manifestation of light through evolution is ultimately brought about by the will to be conscious, which is inherent in the infinite. Our souls are looking to be realized. And when we are not creating the space, it's like knocking at the door. It's like, are you gonna open or what? And we go, this sucks. Right? You know, I was doing this talk in Puerto Rico, and I'm like, how do I say it sucks in Español? And you know how I translated those Spanish speakers? Esto está de madre. And it's really a death. And like Bromet, a union minister who wrote a book, Finding Yourself in Transition, he says it's a death to an old way of living and being. To live is to grow. To grow is to change. And to change is to die to the old. And we suffer not because we are meant to suffer through change, but like Buddha says, it is our resistance to change what makes us suffer. If we would be like happy then, okay, let it be, nothing. It will be a pleasant experience. So the key then is, how can we embrace change in such a way that we get the gift, we get the goodie that is waiting for us. Bromet continues saying that transitions may be uncomfortable, yet they are always meaningful. It is a time when the old order of our life is disrupted. It is a time where our old way of being is disturbed. It may be a time when our sense of reality is challenged. Though painful, this can be extremely significant times in our times. They're wonderful opportunities to gain strength and wisdom. Are you with me? Yes? So then listen to this one. This is deeper. In the process of going through the change and experiencing suffering and the fear and all of that, she says, Jean Houston, in times of suffering, when you feel abandoned, perhaps even annihilated. I have the attorney here who corrected me in the 9:30. Thank you very much. There is occurring at deeper levels than your pain, the entry of the sacred, the possibility of redemption. Wounding opens the doors of our sensibility to a larger reality, which is blocked to our habituated and conditioned point of view. Suffering gives us eyes and ears to see and hear what our normal eyes and ears cannot. So then what's the solution? I got the solution for you. You want a solution? Okay. We have to become experts managing change. So you say, I'm an expert in managing change. And I'm going to be excited about change, even if I am like, I'm going to embrace change. And you go, okay, let's embrace change. But like I was saying, but give me more. If you want me to embrace change, what can I do? And I'm going to give you, Raul, the solution. We need to understand, this is the key, that change is a process. And what is a process? It's a change occurring over a period of time. That has helped me so much when I get stressed or nervous. I go, Anna, it's a process. It's going to take time. Certain elements have to be in order. I learned this in North Carolina. Get your ducks in a row type of thing, right? So a process has certain elements that must occur in the right order and the right time. Trying to force your personal will can be counterproductive. Imagine forcing a flower to bloom or blossom before it's ready. That may kill the flower. A child attempting or forcing the child to walk or speak out of the right moment can really affect the child's psyche. Anything that we do to violate that natural process will damage and inflict suffering. And what makes us force something is that we are in fear and we want to see it resolved, and we need to trust the time and the order. So what is the recommendation? It requires that we trust two things: divine wisdom and divine order inherent in the process. So I want you to think for a moment of any change you might be going through, or you have gone through, or maybe when you will go through, or somebody who's going through, and say, there's an element of divine wisdom and order in that process. And I'm going to honor it. I'm going to let it be. I'm going to flow with it. So I have an affirmation for you and I to, do together. Are you ready? Okay. Is Dale ready to make this affirmation? I am willing, together, I am willing to trust divine wisdom and order in my process of change. Are you really? Let's do it again. I am willing to trust divine wisdom and order in my process of change. I want you to bring into your heart somebody that you know is struggling with change, and you're going to make it. We're going to make it for that person. It says, you are willing to trust divine wisdom and order in your process of change. And now let's hold it for all of us. We are, we. Okay. And we're going to include anything. I have to bring the whole, that's a big deal for me, the whole shooting thing. And I'm holding that all the changes that need to happen in us and at the policy level, at the government level, it's taking place and it's just a process. So let's affirm, we are willing to trust divine wisdom and order in our process of change. And change will lead us to a sacred destination if we are ready to cooperate with it and trust it. I was like, how did you know I was going to say that? I forgot. Okay, so let's do it again. Change. I said, these people have become more enlightened. Yeah, okay. Together. Change will lead me to a sacred destination if I cooperate with it and trust it. The key is the trust and cooperation. And we will see wonderful things. But you know what the key is? Don't think you can sustain this good energy and divine order and divine wisdom in the change if you have no prayer practice. It's really difficult to sustain some worldly process in a spiritual way if you don't go within and have some sort of connection, because the stimuli of the world is going to go, what do you mean? This should have happened this way or at this time? And you need to go within and trust that as you're staying in that connection, you will be led to, this is mine to do now, and I need to allow this to unfold naturally. And when you come from that place of prayer and connection, you allow that perfect dance of doing and allowing and trusting and letting it be, and know that ultimately your sense of safety does not come from anything out there, it comes from within. So the more you go in, become familiar in that state of being, the more you will see and you will be able to embrace it. And what will come about that? Everything that we want: freedom, peace of mind, joy, much good. So moments where we are like trembling and not trusting, come back to the principle. Come back to the affirmation. Trusting divine order and divine wisdom. Reaching in the hearts of your darkest night. Lifts you off the ground when you've lost the fight. Keeps hanging on through the disbelief. Every day, every step, every dream, hope can change everything, can change you. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. So now please click on the subscribe button below and hit the notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and family. We love you, we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things.